I am overly excited about this podcast today because I have my dear friend from Motorsports World who helped me put all of this together. Her and Cindy Sisson gathered some phenomenal women for you guys to hear from, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We often talk about owning your space in a room, and I could not think of a sport where it's more in demand than in the world of motorsports for women who walk into that space to own their own space in the room, because we'll never own the room, but we're not trying to. We just want to own our space in the room, which is being the excellence that we all are. So we have a very diverse group from the motorsport world. Thank you, Cindy, who is the executive director of Women in Motorsport North America, which was co-founded by my other guest, Lynn St. James. And so I'm just going to introduce our panel. We have Jennifer Paul, who's a junior engineer from India, I believe.
Yes, ma'am.
Not Indiana, you guys.
No,
India.
I actually went to school in India, but close.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
IUPUI. So
So
it's
tell me,
Purdue,
Jennifer, because
Indianapolis.
we need to know
Mhm.
what you do at Penske Motorsports, because I didn't want to dive into that. I wanted you guys to be able to explain a little bit, because normally I do that because it's not so important. But I think it's important for people to understand the magnitude of what you guys bring together. So, can you give us just a brief description of what you do at Penske?
Sure thing. In a nutshell, I would like to say, basically crunch into numbers and look at squiggly lines is basically it. But since what I want to do is race engineering, which is technically an all-encompassing job, it's a lot to do with power, tires, aerodynamics, and everything that dictates the performance of a car. So, post race reporting, pre race reporting, a lot of sim stuff. Um, yeah, that's basically it for now. It's very nebulous, but I'm in it for the long haul.
Excellent. And I already know what my other two do, but I'm going to let them give you a brief description, because I'm going to start with you, Cindy. I know you've been in the space of women in the world of automobiles, not just motorsports. So this has been a passion of yours your whole career. I don't know about your whole life, but you have just done a phenomenal job of promoting women in the automotive industry as well as in the world of motorsports. Where are you now and what are you doing?
Well, I'm in Mooresville, North Carolina, which is called Race City, USA. And I'm honored to be on your show, Coach Bev. When Lynn shared your name and your information, I Googled the heck out of you, and you're quite an inspiration and icon to all women. My career has not all been automotive and motorsports. It really started out, I worked for the 84 Olympics. I became the director of marketing for the Ladies Professional Golf Association, fell in love with a brand called Gatorade and was their director of sports marketing. But all along the way, there's this woman named Lynn St. James sitting next to us here. We met 33 years ago. And what
Lynn said,
happened,
stop saying numbers.
yeah, he hates when I say that because it was actually April 17th. And the reason we met is I was working with the LPGA and I thought, you know what, this lady's so amazing. And so I asked if I could come and watch her do a race. And I brought her all this LPGA gear thinking she'd start wearing our LPGA stuff. And I don't know if she ever did or not, but since that day, we've been pretty much best friends in a journey in life together. When Lynn was the president of the Women's Sports Foundation, while I was at the LPGA, we actually created a summit in 91 to teach the golf industry on the economic value of the woman golfer. And Lynn was on her team and she awarded me the President's Award. And I'll always remember that. And I'll always have that trophy right next to me as a symbol of our friendship. So today, we really haven't publicly announced my new position with Women in Motorsports North America. It was founded in 2020, last year, last April, and it's taken off. And I think our timing is incredibly right now. The audience is listening. The world wants more women in motorsports. I think a lot of that's been driven by uh, Netflix series. What's the name of that, guys? Why can't I think of it?
Drive to Survive.
Yeah,
Drive
Drive
to
to
Survive.
Survive. Yeah, Drive to Survive. I had a blessing call today. The team that won the Formula One race this week in Red Bull Racing reached out to me, and they are just such on a mission to get more women involved. So the sport is really taken off. We're taking off, and I'll be quiet from there.
Okay. And we just had Alba Colin come on. And Alba is an award-winning member of the Hendrick Motorsports Group. And all I can sum up and say is that she makes cars faster. And and Alba, before you speak, I have to say this.
Yeah.
Stop it. Just stop making cars faster. Because I had a serious accident. So I need to preface that. And then I met Lynn St. James at the Women's Sports Foundation, where I was honored to be given International Coaches Hall of Fame. And she said, well, come up and hang out with me at the motorsport driveway. And I did.
Mhm.
And then she tricked me by saying, well, we'll just take a lap around the track in the pace car. I'm thinking, okay, it's just the pace car. It's a 4-seater. Can't be that bad. But when we took off, I was like this. I was there, and then I was like this. I don't know if it's G-forces or what. I was hooked ever since. So I know that this is one of your areas of expertise. So I'm going to just let you do a small intro to you and what you do.
Hi, how are you? It's nice to be here today, and thank you very much for the invitation. Sorry for all the technical problems. It took me 2 different computers just to get here, but finally I made it. So my name is Alba Colon, Director of Competition Systems at Hendrick Motorsports. I have had the privilege to work with this amazing woman, especially with, Lynn. I have known Lynn for many, many, many years, and I am so proud to see everything that that she's doing and her team to get to where we are today. There's still more work to do, but it's just amazing to see how many women we are reaching. So long story short, born in Spain, I grew up in Puerto Rico. My whole family is in Puerto Rico. And one day I decided to work on a race car when I was in college. And from there, everything changed in my life completely. I moved to Michigan Motors for 20 something years, right? We're not saying years today. That's what I think that I heard earlier.
Just a little
No,
while
I
ago, a
worked
little
there
while
for
ago.
yeah, no, for many years. I'm very proud of all my years working in racing. But for many years, General Motors, specifically in racing, in many areas of racing, with the last one being in the Cup Series. And 6 years ago, I got the call to work at Hendrick Motorsports. And like you said, we work in many areas. In my specific areas, more on the team analytics and supporting the race teams during the weekend. But at the end of the day, of course, we are looking for fast cars, but mainly we're looking for safety. At the end of the day, it's about the safety not only of our drivers, our crew, but mainly our fans and for everybody. Motorsports is something that I have enjoyed for many, many years, and we want to make sure the sport continue being around and, of course, definitely safe. I love my job. We work many, many hours as every other place that I pretty much. And Cindy knows that she can find me at 7 a.m. on Sunday, and she knows that I will answer, right, Cindy? Like I've done many times. But we all love what we do, and the passion is something very key that we all have, and that we will continue working hard to get more females. But not only that, it's just to have our voices heard in this amazing sport that we all love. So thank you for having me here.
So this brings me to my friend. And I've known Lynn a little while, but we won't talk about years. But just a phenomenal soul. And as a track coach, if you ever wonder, just if you're doing anything in life, everything that they do in the motorsport world applies to you and can be implemented in everything that you do. We were in this car and the wall, I'm on the passenger side, and the wall is like right here, right? Because we're going so fast. And she looks at me and says, well, you know, there's a governor on the car. And I'm like, what is that? That means it may say this, but it can only go that. And I thought to myself, well, thank God for that. And she was barely moving the wheel and talking. And I was trying not to talk so she could focus, but she was talking. And she says, you see how much power, how much control you have. You need to be very delicate. And it taught me about power and the need to not try to overpower power. And that, for me, became a light bulb in my own coaching career. And even as a consultant, those are things that I teach. And a lot of it came directly from that moment where she was just conversing. So without further ado, this is an historical figure. And if for all of you who don't understand the word motor sport, and I emphasize the word sport, is that Lynn is considered by Sports Illustrated one of the top 100 sportswomen of the century. So that's how impactful my friend is. So Lynn, I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
Oh my heavens, Beverly, this is just so much fun to reconnect with you. And I just have to make a comment. It was the 20th century. So what's happening? We're already in the 21st century and I feel like I'm getting old. But you know, we have such a stellar group here in listening to just this moment of listening to them. I mean, I met Elba many years ago, but you know, she doesn't just make cars go fast and safe. She makes them legal. She had to work with all of these engineers. It always amazed me. And here's a woman, I thought from Puerto Rico, Spain, Puerto Rico, and she's very diminutive, very tiny in presence. And she had to deal with every one of those race teams at General Motors when she represented General Motors in NASCAR. And she had to keep them in line. She had to communicate with them. She had to get them to, you know, they're always wanting to cheat. They're always wanting to bend the rules and not get caught. And she had to keep them in line. And of course, now has moved on to a race team in Hendrick Motorsports and is working with a massive one of the top teams in the NASCAR and Cup Series and in motorsports. So it's phenomenal, really, what this woman has accomplished and continues to be a leader and acknowledged. And my friend Cindy, yes, we met over 30 years ago, but she's known as a super connector. You know, she's worked in all areas of sports and marketing for the LPGA, for Gatorade, in NASCAR. I mean, you know, our paths continued to cross, but her passion for really advancing women in all areas, but now fortunately she's really gotten the bug for doing it in motorsports. And so I'm most excited to have her part of our working group, part of our board of directors of Women in Motorsports North America. And as she mentioned, and we're giving advance notice here that she is now the executive director of Women in Motorsports North America. And she's going to help us go crazy and move and go to great places. And I can't wait to hear more about Jennifer. I just in this moment of this, I'm meeting her for the first time, and she talks about those squiggly lines. You know, data is collected in those race cars now about every piece of movement and every piece of activity that's happening in that race car is now collected on a screen, and it's all data collection. And race car drivers now have to look at those things. I mean, those are valuable pieces of information to help teach us how to go faster and where we can improve, as well as all of the technical engineering. But our sport it represents every aspect of sport. The drivers are the athletes. The drivers are also, like many cases, like the quarterback of the team, because if they really have to show leadership within a team, communication is critical. We're hidden in the car, so they don't get to see us perform our athletic, delivery. And then you've got teamwork, and you've got, it truly is like a ballet with big pit stops. And you have, now the teams have gotten so big, and there's so much going on that the communication required and the teamwork required is just, it's incredible. It's people don't always see that and understand that. So, and I do remember the hot laps I gave you, and I had no idea it left that kind of impression on you, Bev. I mean, it is a delicate balance. You can't if you try to force that car to go where you want it to go when it's not ready to go there, you don't have all four tires telling you, and you feel what it's telling you. You've got to be in touch with that vehicle, and you just guide it. You just guide it around the racetrack, and that's what you have to do with people. You've got to guide them to their level of excellence so that they pursue that, that excellence that they're capable of.
Okay, let's start talking about that then. You guys are in a field where error, and the word error, I use any error, can be deadly. That's got to be a lot of pressure, whether you're in the office preparing or monitoring or in the car itself. How do you handle that pressure? Or do you see it as pressure when you're doing your job?
I'm going to do a quick, remember our Billie Jean King, dear, pressure is a privilege. If you can't handle pressure, you don't belong in motorsports. You don't even belong in competition. You have
to say that again. She said, say that again.
Pressure is a privilege. And that's a Billie Jean King quote. And if you can't handle that pressure, you don't belong in our sport, because you've got to deliver a performance. You've got to be able to manage that well within your capabilities, but you can't let pressure get to you. But you have to realize that it is a privilege, and you better deliver. I mean, that's my opinion on that. But I want to hear the others.
Yeah, I have something to say about. Sorry, it's repeating what I'm saying. Anyway, so I'm going to quote my professor on this, and he says that get comfortable with being wrong 90% of the time, and I've seen it work best even at.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. You just said be comfortable with
being wrong 90%
with
of the
being
time.
wrong
90%.
80% of the time. 80 to 90% of the time, being
90.
comfortable with being wrong
90% of the time. Yes.
That's deep. Because with egos in sports, everybody wants to be right all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys handle that?
I feel like it really builds the spirit of resilience within you. And I feel like what's really worked for me with mistakes is being able to write things down, and also writing the approach to how I tackle that issue, and make sure you never repeat them again, because we're all human. We've all made mistakes. And and then the only way to learn from mistakes is to never make them again. And I feel like
the magic there. Don't make the mistake twice.
again. And usually in racing, people can be really forgiving. In fact, recently the thing that happened at the shop was honestly, this was an honest mistake. I fat fingered something, and something broke and in the sim, and my coworkers, they nicknamed me Trouble. And every time I'd walk in, they're like, oh boy, here comes trouble, but ironically what happened was so I'm a shop-based engineer, and if I haven't made myself clear before, so a lot of what we do at the shop is that we set up everything that needs to happen before the race happens. So it's everything before the racetrack. So basically, so what happened in the sim thing was I found this bug in our in-house sim software, and we were able to get it addressed before anybody else. So in a way, that mistake actually helped fix our problem in the future. So, but yes, again, like writing it down really helps. But I'm just saying that as long as you learn from your mistake, I think that shouldn't stop you.
Yeah.
And it, like I said, it helps you build character as well. So I wanted to say that.
Excellent.
Hmm.
Jennifer or Cindy, would you guys like to expound upon any of that? I mean, Alba.
I think we'll give it to Alba because my role is not so much in that side of the world. I mean, sadly, I've had dear friends in the sport that are not with us today, very very dear friends. But I think this is more of an Alba question or
Okay,
answer.
and yeah, and you will have to repeat the question because I just want to move in two different rooms at the house just to get the best connection. Okay,
And
so I
you
missed
got a
that
good one
part.
right now. So what we talked about was everything that you guys do in terms of your decision making and the precision you have to operate in is a mistake could cost a life. Unlike any other sport, this one has that pressure involved in it. How do you handle that pressure of having to be so precise with so much on the line?
Well, no, that I heard a little bit of what Jennifer said, and I think a little bit also it's a little bit of an art, and to make sure that you're doing the right thing at all times. An example, Jennifer said that she is before the race, right? Yes, I am
Mm-hmm.
before the race, but I am a lot during the weekend during the race. So to make sure that the cars are correct, that the people that put the cars together went to those checklists, that there were no mistakes, no issues, because not only to lose a race because a $1 part. And by the way, that has happened, but it's just about to make sure that everything is correct because we have the life of that driver, like I said, of that pit crew, of everybody, in our hands. So we want to make sure that no mistakes are committed. If you notice, NASCAR has put some rules now about if you lose a tire, a wheel in the middle of the race, there's a hefty penalty. Because once again, the last thing that you want is that tire hit another car, or worse, no, meaning really bad, that goes to a race fan that just came to enjoy the event. So you have to make sure that every single person does their job correctly, do everything that they can to make sure that nothing bad happens at the end. And you learned how to deal with the pressure. It's something that we know our expectations are very high on everything that we do. And we need to make sure that we are doing everything correctly at all times. And if you did something wrong, if you committed a mistake, to learn from that mistake or have to do it much better. And by the way, it's not only us, it's also we work together with many other entities to make sure that everything goes well and correctly. And NASCAR is amazing at looking at many other experts, not only experts here in the NASCAR field, but other experts to make sure that bad things don't happen and that we learn from each other. So at the end of the day, it's just when you are at work, you have to be at your best and be the best of the best of what you do.
Right.
Wow. Okay,
And then
so that leads me okay, Lynn, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I do want to add one more. If you make a mistake, you have to own it. The sooner you own it, because you can stop it from mushrooming into something else. You can't hide. There's so many businesses and there's so many professions where you can quite frankly, you can kind of lie or hide. Don't nobody call me on that.
Right.
And you can do that. So you've screwed up some point. The sooner you can own it and let it be known, and then move on, and that you're going to be respected for that. So I just kind of wanted to add that.
I
No,
also
because that goes back into what I was going to ask next, which is a lot of times when you're working as a part of a team, whether it's a staff or whatever in sports or a team as an athlete, your ego wants to supersede your outcome at times and protect yourself. You guys all work in team environments where it's critical with interdependency. As leaders of those teams in your own right, what is your advice about leadership and being a part of a team? Cindy, I'm going to start with you on that since you are the new leader of women in motorsports?
Well,
North
thank you.
America.
And
Let me be precise
uh,
about that because that's powerful.
well, leadership comes from teamwork, in my opinion. I mean, you're only as good as the team that you have around you. And that's my blessing here with Women in Motorsports North America. When we started, Lynn and Beth went out and found some of the brightest, most passionate people. Passion is a key word for me. If you don't have passion, you can't lead. And so it took us a while to get started, but then you all of a sudden find who your I'm not going to use the word troop, but who's on your team. And the ladies on the side here next to me, those are my team players. So to me, it's really about passion, hard work, dedication. But being a good leader is also allowing people to grow and to learn and not always be, I'm in charge, so to speak. And I think that's something that's really important.
I want
So
to respond to
go
that,
ahead.
Bevel, because I've known Cindy a long time, but I've watched her, particularly in this work environment for women in motorsports. She leads with kindness.
Oh,
Her leadership, her leadership skill, I don't, whatever, she leads with kindness, and it's amazing how that engages people to want to be a part of something, and to also raise their bar, because she leads with kindness, and I think listening and mentorship mentality. The people that are involved with Women in Motorsports North America, the sort of the cut off of what if you're part of us or not part of us is that you have to have a mentorship mentality. You have to be willing to help somebody else. You have to be willing to take that call. You have to be willing to answer that email, because we are about mentorship in careers. But Cindy is really, her leadership is kindness. That's her
thank
that's
you.
her trump card.
That's what my trump card is that.
Trump card. Yeah, that's that thing that you
That's that thing she does.
What? No, I'm just kidding. Well, I truly believe in the last 2 days, Coach Bev, we're working on a big project. In fact, Pastor Ken, if you want to put that up, one of the things I'm very dedicated to is telling stories. Nope, the other one is I've created. Here we go. I created a series with a partner named Pam Miller. She is amazing. She's won 8 Emmys, and she produces every NASCAR Cup race. She's been doing it for 20 years. A woman producing a NASCAR Cup race is just incredible. So we're now on our second documentary of finding these amazing women. We call them They Were Left Behind. And so we're doing an event at the Peterson Automotive Museum. I don't know if anybody there is from California, but it's May 24th. And two things happened in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. It just touched my heart. Is you've heard of Penske organization, Greg Penske, and he so believes in what we're all doing. Penske's an investor in Women in Motorsports North America. But he told any employee at his Longo Toyota, if they wanted to come to this event, he would personally pay for it. And
That's commitment.
that's commitment. And then the same thing, Dave Allen, a big shout out to the Auto Club, the big raceway out there. Not only are they sending information to all their ticket holders, which is almost 100,000 people, but he said, I am buying a ticket for every one of my staff members because Paula deserves for people to know what she has done for motorsports. No, she was left behind and nobody knew her story. And that to me, that was it. Like, it's working. So thank you, Lynn. That
It's
means a lot.
working. Um,
Okay, good
Jennifer
question. Off the
or
screen.
Abba?
Oh, yeah. No, I feel like also a good quality that I'd like to emphasize on is performance. Whatever it is you set out to do, be the best at it, at it. And anybody would be, willing to follow along or want to work with you. And actually, a motto that Penske, we swear by is effort equals results. And at the end of the day, that's all that we're shooting for. We want the best possible outcome. We want to have the fastest car, and we want, goal oriented and success driven people to bring that goal to fruition. So that's and then to actually emphasize on mistakes, since I was on about it. I wanted to, just bring up that confidence also is a very big factor when you're trying to effectively communicate to a race team and stuff like that. And I feel like it has a huge part to play in sort of like finding what your mistake is, effectively communicating it, and also learning from it. Yes, ma'am. So,
I wanted to add one thing, something that we believe at Hendrick Motorsports. Teamwork is about accountability, and we believe in accountability is at every level. It's at every level. Great teams don't spend time faulting each other about what happened. Like we have said, we own it, but we are accountable from the top.
Alba, can I interrupt you quickly and have you repeat that about accountability?
Okay.
Oh,
Teamwork is about accountability, and accountability is everybody from the bottom to the top, to the top to the bottom. And at the end of the day, it's about looking for faults or faulting each other. At the end of the day, we win together and we lose together. I really believe, and I understand that now more than ever. When the driver wins a race and gets out of the car, I say thank you, of course, to the sponsors, definitely, but thank you to everybody at the shop. And I think about it. Every single person in that shop has something to do with that car. Not only people purchase the car, but the person, let's say the person that is cleaning the floors. If the floors are not clean, right? We don't work well. So everything, we are accountable. So that's one thing. The other thing that we really believe on, and Mr. Hendrick is very clear about this, is about being a servant leader. As a leader, my main job is to make sure that my team has the resources to do their job. And my job is to serve them. What do they need to do their job better? So if every leader does that, we become a successful team.
so Lynn, I'm going to come to you on this because they firing over here, and I don't even know how to process all this good information. But here is one of my, I won't call it a pet peeve, but I'm gonna call it a pet peeve, is that sometimes the talent, they call the driver or the star or the athlete or the entertainer, they call them the talent, right? Believes they're beyond the team. What's your position as having been in the seat of the talent? What would be your advice?
I mean, I think I commented earlier where the driver is sometimes almost like the quarterback of a team because they need to rally everybody around them. But Bev, each team it's an entrepreneurial business. Each team is an individual corporation within. Let's just take NASCAR. I mean, they have 43 cars usually that start the race, and they have 20 teams maybe, or 15 to 20 teams. Each one of those teams is an individual corporation run by a team owner. The culture of that team owner filters down through the entire organization. I actually tell young race car drivers that I'm mentoring, race car driver wants a ride. They want to drive. They want a spot in a race team as their driver. And then they often then get interviewed, or they're being interviewed to try to get that spot or to try to actually work for that team. And I try to tell them to make sure that they know that not only are they being interviewed, but they're also interviewing the team. Because if that team culture is not consistent with your ability to perform, because everybody needs a certain culture around them to bring the best out in them. And if that culture is not a good fit, you might be better to not actually get that drive. And so when you have a team owner, a team manager, a crew chief, a driver, these are kind of the different most pivotal members of the team. And then you build it from there, where you have your your fabricators and your crew members that are over the wall. I mean, you start to build that team around that. If they're all aligned, it's magic. That's what makes that's it because they're almost all talented. I mean, almost everybody in a race organization has talent and ability, otherwise they wouldn't have that job. But when the culture fits and everybody is in sync and they also believe in their driver, it's magical. I mean, and that's one of the times the difference of why it looks like a certain team or a certain driver dominates. We can use Jeff Gordon as an example back in NASCAR. We could use Jimmy Johnson in NASCAR, but a lot of that had to do with that continuity and that consistency and that magic within the entire organization that brought the best out in everybody. And that's why they were better than their competitors so often. Not because they were more talented, not because they're all talented, not because they actually built better race cars, because they, in most cases, the cars were all good that were in the top 10, but why did they win more often? Why did they win more championships more often? It was a team culture, and it was believability, and it was communication. Everything was aligned. And when that culture, it's magical. And nobody wants to talk about that because it's a little soft, fuzzy kind of stuff. And, we're still a pretty darned rough, tough, competitive sport. And that isn't the stuff that people always want to hear about. And they want to know it's more horsepower or more money, or like you say, the driver's got, well, it's just, I'm more talented. Well, it's not that at all. So if you kind of peel the onion, you will find out it's a people sport, and the people that are glued and work really well together, they can separate themselves from their competitors.
That, I think, goes back to the type of leadership, and we often overuse this word, Cindy, called culture. And we don't really know what that means. But for me, a winning culture is when everybody works in harmony towards a specific outcome. We don't think of team as, because I'm sure all the environments that y'all work in, there are people you connect with better than others, but you can work with everybody. I don't know if that makes sense. So to me, a winning culture is, and a team is a consortium of individuals with different skill sets that combine their efforts for a specific outcome.
It's also respect. They respect each other, and they show that respect. Because, I've lived both of it, Bev, I can tell you. I've lived it when I had it, and I lived it when I didn't. And the difference was huge. But it's respect. Like Alba was talking about, that accountability all the way from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top. That's not only accountability, but it's respect for each other, and that accountability, that you respect you respect that person that's cleaning the floor. You show respect. I remember one time when, the guys were like, they were like complaining, all I do is, I just pick up tires and I take the tires back to get them installed, and I bring you tires, with air pressure. I said, you don't understand. Air pressure and tire, and that tire being mounted properly on that wheel is one of the most important things in a race car. That's all I got in touch with are these 4 tires. So it's as important as the engine builder. It's as important as as every other person on the team. And they go, oh, you have to build up sometimes that respect with people within the team so that they understand how important they really are.
So ladies, you guys are working in a very male-dominated arena, and we talk about this word respect all too often. I know as a coach, and as a Black person, I walked into the room sometime as the only female, and way too often as the only Black person in the room. And usually I was both, especially early on in my career. But I always walked into the room I walked into a coaching room as a coach, not as a female, not as a minority, not as Black, not as young, not as old. I walked into a coaching arena as a coach. How do you guys garner respect in a field that you're in when you walk into those rooms and you may be one of few
I'll take that one. It's funny because when I first started in my career, after I worked for the Olympics, I actually became a stockbroker, and all men all the time, and I beat them all the time, and they just hated that. They actually had a word for me, but I won't say what it is because I don't know who your whole audience is. Um, we often get asked this question. We'll get an interview, probably all four of us. So, what, how would you change things, or how are you being treated by a woman? For me personally, I've never really had a problem. I don't, I feel blessed again that men have been good to me. So that's something that it hasn't been a challenge. So Bev, I understand what you're saying, but for me personally, it really hasn't been something that weighs me down, if you will. And I just, I wanted to say I feel lucky, but I also say this, there's the three other women on the call with us. When you bring up, Jennifer, I just met you, so maybe not so much, but when you bring up Alba or Lynn St. James in any room, you never hear a bad word, not once. It's they dote over them, and probably two of the most respected women in the industry are right here with us.
Well, thank you, Cindy. But that's today. That's now. That's in today's. And I mean, I really would like Alba. Alba has lived this probably more than anybody. I really want. I want Alba. Come on, Alba.
No, when I started in the sport, I remember going to a test session and I realized, and after that going to NASCAR race, and I realized I was one of the very, very few engineers, female, Hispanic. So I had three things, three things that were out there. That for me they were normal, they were normal. But I realized very early in my career that I was different. I realized there was one time on a track that I was not allowed to enter because they were thinking I was a race fan for a test session. And the driver was the one that coming a little bit later to the test, helped me to get in. How is that embarrassing, So you let all the guys enter that they are going to work, but I was not allowed at that moment. That happened to me with many other items. But one thing was I worked very hard. I did my job, and I just kept going and going and going, and I earned the respect, and that was early in the career. With that said, it's still a little bit sad. A couple of years ago, I was at the track, and this person started to talk to the other three gentlemen that are with me, asking them about all their careers and everything that they are doing, where they went to school, what they do for the team. And when the person got to me, it said the following: "You must be the PR girl." That's what he said. He didn't even have the courtesy to ask me what I was doing or anything like that. And I see Lynn, I bet she has gone through many of those things. And the reality is, you know what? I first of all, the PR people work so hard, and I cannot even do the kind of job that they do. So everybody in all these jobs work extremely hard, and they are fantastic at what they do. But it just felt so sad that the person didn't even give me a courtesy, just assumed something without even knowing me. So and again, I feel sorry for people like that. I don't get mad. I just feel sorry. I feel sorry that perhaps didn't learn some manners about that. The interesting thing, I was not even allowed to answer because the three guys that were there with me said, "Oh no, she's the boss," and he did not even care. He just kept talking to the guys. So it's just interesting to see that things like that happen. But I am not letting my worth be decided by people like that. I have worked extremely hard to get to where I am today. There's still more work to do, way more work to do. And you know what? You just have to be strong and just keep going. It's not fun to see that, but you just have to keep going and going and going and going and help the future generations.
Yeah.
Amen.
And Jennifer, people like Alba open the door for people like yourself to
That's
get
right.
in, and you can hear what she's taking. What do you say to the advice she just gave? And then I'll come to Lynn.
I honestly, alluding to what you said, I actually am very fortunate to be part of a team that loves and respects me for what I do. And also, this is my very first job too, so I've only been in this industry 1 year. But I will tell you, back when I was bitten by the racing bug, and this is back in India, and I was racing motorcycles. I was, I'd like to call it fluffy. I don't like the word fat. Um, but yeah, no, I received a lot of backlash too, because I'm like, hey, people would say, oh, you're going to be slower on the straights anyway, even if you're fast in the corners and things like that. So, but I've learned, to value, like, okay, you are going to receive backlash no matter where you go, and the question I ask over and over is, who are these people to me, and why do I have to let their opinions matter?
Mm,
And it matters, why does it? And at the end of the day, I think it's on you to use your god-given talent and take it to where you want it to go. And and any place you go, like I said before, if you're willing to put in the effort, like work your socks off, and then keep your head up, not give up. And I was fortunate, to have my parents, and the reason I'm here even today, is because they believed in me when no one else did. And if you have a really good support system, you'd be surprised to see how far that takes you. Because at the end of the day, like I said, performance is the key element that sets you apart. And so at the end of the day, when you've given it your all, results will follow. So that's what I say.
excellent.
Mhm.
Oh, that was excellent. Len?
Hey,
Well, what
hey,
a what a superstar she is. I am
I
like, oh
know.
my God, she represents what
And
we're really.
such a baby.
Yeah, you know. But I did comment I wanted to make was Beverly, you actually set this up in the beginning, which is owning your own space, owning yourself and your confidence. It comes with body language, it comes with posture, it comes with how you a handshake. I mean, making eye contact, handshake, addressing people with confidence. It's not being cocky, it's not being, but I think how you deliver who you are, and it should speak, and then hopefully as you perform, that also supports it and speaks for itself. But it's really hard. One of the hardest things I have had happen or had to deal with was, I didn't start racing until I was 27, so I had at least a little maturity under my belt. I'm not saying I was mature, but now I see. I mean, I don't know how Jennifer is. I don't need, but I see these young people, females, yes, but even some of these young guys that I see these, they're teenagers, and their life experiences have not really prepared them, and yet they're in this circle, they're in this arena, and when you try to talk to them about that, about a handshake and about eye contact and about speaking, how to speak and represent yourself. I think I couldn't have done that when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, And so I think our sport has really skewed young, particularly in the area of race car drivers. And then because we do have so many new people coming into the sport, which is what we want, and particularly diverse people, populations of various cultures, and wanting more women. I mean, the floodgates have opened. So consequently, though, you're also bringing in a lot of new people who don't know the lingo. That's one of the things we did at Women in Motorsports North America when we created our website. We created a Racing 101. If you don't even know the language and how is the race team structured and all that, we wanted to be able to kind of be this portal of information, so that if you're new or you're maybe looking at motorsports as a new potential candidate, for a career, that you have a place to go to kind of start to have a little bit of a leg up, because it doesn't exist in our sport. I don't think that in any other place. So, that's, you got to own that space. You got to own who you are. And you've got to work towards building your results, but you can't just, oh, hi, I want to be a race car. Oh, I'd love to be an engineer. That would be so nice if I could, it doesn't play very well.
Doesn't cut it, does it? So for me, Len, when I came into coaching, The one thing that I understood what I represented. I represented a whole race of people. Anytime that you're Black or Hispanic, you don't get the opportunity to not represent um, your culture. But also, I represented women. So I call it, I had the honor and the privilege of walking through doorways that were opened for me by prior generations. And I had the honor and the responsibility, but it's more of a privilege that I wanted to perform at such a pace that you wanted to hire people who look like me. That was
Very,
important to me.
you know,
And I'm going to leave that unto the panel and let you guys go with whatever thought came to your mind.
Cindy and I had lunch just a couple of weeks ago with a brand new employee with McLaren Racing, and she was person of color, female, and I think only worked for them maybe about 3 or 4 months. And so she went to the first race that was in St. Petersburg and realized as she was, she's in her first race, and then she looked around and realized there just aren't that many women, particularly women of color. And then she had these people approaching her. She had come from Disney, by the way, but just as a point of reference. And she had people approaching her saying, "Oh, we're so glad you're here," and that kind of like honoring her for the fact that she's representing females, person of color. And she was uncomfortable. I mean, she was like, she just felt uncomfortable. And I was trying to explain to her what you just said, Bev, which is, I didn't really say this is an honor, but I'm just saying, you've got to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you are going to be wearing that because you're living it, you represent it. And so don't be ashamed of it, or please don't be uncomfortable. Learn to
Embrace it.
Embrace it. Yeah. Learn to be comfortable with that level of being uncomfortable. And I think that could help for lots of people, really, when you just aren't like everybody else. And
unfortunately, I've heard even a professional Black football coach said, when asked about being a Black football coach, in particular at this particular team, I won't name the coach, that he said, "Why can't you just interview me as a coach?" No, that's not the way it works. So you might as well own that so that it doesn't become offensive and defensive.
right.
And you can become more informative. And then that's my way of owning my space. You can't make me feel uncomfortable about who I already am. So I'll open it up to the floor.
I think that's what we're hearing a lot for women in motorsports. We're now talking about racers, and their ultimate goal is not to say she was a woman racer who just got on the pole, or she was a woman racer that just won a race. It's to be, she is a racer that got on the pole. It's a racer, because the famous quote is, the car knows no gender, right? So I think for women in general, that is the ultimate goal for us to be able to say, or the media to be able to say, it didn't matter if she was a man or a woman. And Lynn, you can echo that, but that's something we hear a lot.
Yeah.
But for me, the one thing that I always got when I first started, she's one of the best Black female track coaches. I was like, okay, that's not a compliment. There's not that many of us. And then it became, she's one of the best female track coaches. That's still not a great compliment, because my goal was to eventually become one of the best historical coaches of all sports. And I was able to be blessed to be honored in those spaces eventually throughout my career. But my goal was never to be the best categorized coach. But when they talk about coaching, I wanted them to be able to mention me, or either I could at least be valid in the room. Lynn and Cindy, I remember when I was at Texas and the men's baseball team won a national championship. The football team won the national championship. And I had won the national championship. I said, dang, I got to turn around and win again just to stay in the conversation. because and that's the way we have to operate, and I'm okay with that. If I got to win twice to equal your first, I'm okay with that. So I'm going to turn it over to Alba and Jennifer for comments in that area.
No, the first thing that came to my mind, two different things, but the first one is, diversity is so important. Diversity, if you have a diverse team, and diversity can mean many things, right? But a diverse team will make a stronger team. Imagine that you had everybody thinking the same way. So,
Mm.
and Cindy has heard me saying this, it's about diversity of thought. That's what it's going to make a stronger team. So that's one. The other one doesn't have anything to do with the female or no, but I remember in General Motors, I remember there was not too many people that was like me over there, and not even from my alma mater. And I remember, somebody complimented something that I did, and I said, "Hey, what about if we look for more people like me? Let's go to the University of Puerto Rico and hire more people like me." So I put it in the other way, and you know what? I was so proud that when I left GM, we have hired so many people from my alma mater. And once again, it's a diversity of thought. They saw some skills that we had in the way that we grew up. We didn't, we grew up with not too much, and we became very resourceful. You try to figure out things, because you don't have perhaps what other things were in other universities and so on. So at the end of the day, it's about, do you want to grow? Do you want to be the best of the best, on what you're doing? And for that, you have to work hard. You have to work hard. Uh, Sadly, as a woman, Hispanic, you have to work 2 or 3 times harder, right? But you know what? I am so proud of who I am. I will not change that. I don't want to change. I don't want to change that. And you know what? That this is what God gave me. Use that talent and help others. And when I see, people like Jennifer, and I have had the opportunity to see her 3 times already, and see that energy, and to see that, oh my goodness, she will be many panels and she will do many of these things, okay? Because she's an example. You see that and you are like, we are doing something right. We are doing something right. And she will continue, and we will continue developing the next generation. And at the end of the day, when you pass away, that's the best gift that you can give away, in your life. Like, you'll be remembered because you did something good to help others. So
And before Jennifer goes, I just want to emphasize what Alba just said, and that too often leaders look for yes men because their ego tells them, I always want to be right. When being right becomes more important than your outcome, you got a problem. Your
Amen.
outcome should always be at the focal point, which means I'm going to start off and I'm going to give you a suggestion, and you guys, my team is going to eat it alive. But that suggestion is going to inspire greater thoughts, and we build up on it. But we're all building up on, well, yeah, that's good, but that ain't right. Okay, but what about this? And you start adding on, and then all of a sudden you come out with something that's innovative and creative. And I always believe that we have to, as leaders, create spaces that encourages creativity and mistakes. I'd rather for you to speak up and be wrong than to be quiet
Yes.
and not be an inspiration to the group. So go
Yes.
ahead, Jennifer.
Um, I just want to say, allude to what Cindy said about, behind, cars don't know any gender. Like, it's just to say that once you put the helmet on, it's just racing driver. And I've always been, with the mindset, I've always just gone forward with my goal, just so, because that's what I wanted to do every day of my life. I just never thought that I'd have to prove something to somebody, prove what a woman and, can and can't do, and at the end of the day, I think you have to do what makes you happy. And actually, it humbles me just looking back and reading up on what women had to go through. Like, there was this one story, it stuck to me ever since I read up on it. It was Maria Teresa. and it was back in the 1960s or something. And she was a female Formula One driver, and she got told, and she said, and she wasn't allowed to compete because the then director said, the only helmet a woman should be wearing is at a hairdresser's. So seeing as how we've evolved, from that generation back then to now, when the last time I was on track, and this is very recently, a couple of months ago, every pit stall, or in the pits, I could see women holding forefront roles. Like, we're talking mechanics, drivers, engineers, you name it. Even like PR and stuff. So I love that it's evolved from a society then, and I love that we're headed in the right direction. And with features like WIMNA, and from India, if it was FMSCI, which is the Federation of Motorsports Clubs of India. All of these are initiatives also, like trying to get people to connect and network, because again, at the end of the day, motorsport, it's a close knit community, and I love that there are so many avenues trying to bring people together this way. And there are so many initiatives worldwide that kind of encourages this in the right direction. And I'm very fortunate, and I'm very humbled to be part of this generation where I could look back and boldly take a step in the right direction. So
I
yeah.
love that. Boldly take a step. And
Yes.
that's owning your space in the room. So
Beverly,
I love that. Yes, please.
can I
Cindy.
please do a call out? I know that
Yes.
her mom and dad are in India. This morning I said, "Oh, Jen, make sure your mom and dad are going to be on the call." And she goes, "Oh, I already did that. Half of India is going to be on the call." So
Hey, India.
Hi, India.
Hi, mom and dad.
Yeah, your daughter, that girl, she's going places. And every time she's in the room, the whole place lights up. And you are so blessed to have such a beautiful child with a beautiful heart. Every time, it's funny, every time we see each other, every time Elba and I text each other, every time Lynn and I text each other, what do we always say? What do we always say, Elba? I love you. Every single time. Every time we text. And every time I talk to Lynn, we always end the call. I love you. And
Yes,
feel
that's
the
true.
same way about you, Jen. I'm
Oh, shucks. I
voting
love you.
you. I'm voting you for president. I don't know of what, but you're gonna go really big.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, that's so amazing. That's so amazing. I'm so excited. But let's get into, I can't remember who said it, but someone said it's about the people you surround yourself with. It's about the support system that you have, which is why I became a part of ABIS, which is the Advancements of Blacks in Sports. You guys have Women in Motorsports North America, because it's all a support system. It's an informational resource, because there's loneliness as we walk into this space. And I know, Lynn, you've been in this space as long as I have, in terms of, and maybe even more active longer, because you were president of the Women's Sports Foundation at one point. But supporting and providing a support system for those who are going to walk into these doors, and not feel so alone, not feel isolated, because through isolation is destruction. And if you don't feel supported or have a support system surrounding you, you're going to falter. And I know I didn't have much of a support system when I started, but I built one along the way, unintentionally, but through the grace I have it. I had it. I didn't know to do it. I just did it. And that's what propelled me throughout my career. How do you guys feel about creating spaces of support, and why is that important?
Well, it's critical, and I kind of followed that same um, thing that you did. Although I didn't know I was doing it, but I did create that support system. Sometimes they didn't even know it, that they were supporting me, but because they would be a sounding board or I would ask for advice. But I think that again, I have to use Billie Jean as another example. If you don't know your history, you don't have a future. So listening to Jennifer, understand and start to pay attention to some of the history. That's why what Cindy's doing with the Left Behind really, if we can capture a little bit. I mean, I didn't know much about the history of motorsports when I had my head down and I was, trying to just do my career. But I mean, I think the other thing with women in motorsports in North America that I felt was very critical going in is that our support system was not just all women. It was our male allies. If you have the men in the room, the men at the table who are leaders, who are then raising their hand, showing the support for us, for women in this space, we're trying to make a bigger table. It's a quote that Beth Peretta uses that I love. We're not trying to displace anybody else at the table. We're just trying to build a bigger table. But you need the men who have been the leaders, who have been, the decision makers. We need those allies. We need them in the organization. We need them, every person, every female who's trying to be successful in motorsports. Not only do they need other women to kind of rally behind them because it makes, it helps, is that you really need the men, the team managers, the team owners, whomever, those male leaders need to be supportive and need to be on our team. And we're finding them. I mean, they're there. They're showing up.
Absolutely.
They're raising their hand. They're and that is surprising people. I think the first, the people that came to our summit last year in Charlotte, where we had over 300 people in the room for a day and a half, talking about the issues and celebrating, but also elevating the whole story and the whole importance of women in motorsports. But I think it was like 20% of the people in the room were men. And they were men who were presidents of organizations, who were presidents of companies, who were vice presidents. I mean, they were leaders in the sport and in the industry, and they were there because they wanted to be there, because they care. And so that's another important piece of that support system. It is, don't just look for another gal out there that's going to be your supporter. You look for the smartest people in the room, the smartest people that you can surround yourself with. And I learned so much from the Women's Sports Foundation, those years of working and volunteering and being on the board. And that I would have, if I had not had that experience, Bev, I know I wouldn't have at all been able to have the mindset that we could actually create women in motorsports in North America. I mean, I was being mentored and coached without even knowing I was being coached. And I finally found my space, we can finally do something in motorsports.
And that's really powerful, because I think that when Billie Jean King and the others started the Women's Sports Foundation, it was the presence of an Elton John that really elevated the visibility and credibility of the organization. But it also took the voices of, because I can't remember all the women that were involved when they first started, but I remember having met most of them when I was inducted.
Yeah, I mean, it was Donna DeVerona from swimming.
I remember Donna. Beautiful
PGA, yeah, but another founding supporter was Charles Schultz that did the Peanuts. So Billie kind of crossed all barriers. I mean, she had a way of engaging so many different disciplines, not just
and still does,
and still does, right? But anyway, I've just learned that male allies are critical to our growth and to our ability to. Because we can learn so much, and we want to learn from the best, and some of those are the guys out there, so we need them.
So welcome back, Cindy. And I wanted to piggyback off of what you said earlier, Lynn, about having smart mentors and stuff. And there's this quote that really stuck to me. It says, if you're the smartest person in the room, switch rooms. And I can't tell you the importance of how, mentors, like just having people to look up to and guide you in the right direction. And, this was pivotal, especially since I had no experience. And, it's my was my very first stepping stone into NASCAR. I was telling Cindy the other day, like the only thing I knew about NASCAR was the Cars movie when I came in. But and so it's so important. Like so growing up again, like I didn't know anything about motorsport, having no background, just going off of Formula One. I wasn't driven. But it's so important, and I emphasize on role models because what really got me interested was something, and it's another quote by actually Linda Bishop. I listened to while I was at the summit, and she said, "You can't be what you can't see," and whatever got me started on this entire journey was looking through that Dare to Be Different brochure back in India, 8,000 miles away. And it was just this brochure full of women having roles in Formula One at that time. And just, it could be anybody from a marshal to a tire changer to, a mechanic or a wind tunnel technician. It could be anything. And then I looked up Lena Gade, and apparently it's pronounced Gade back in India. But I looked it up and I was like, man, I wonder what it would take for me to get into that role. And that's really what got me interested. It got me curious. It got me curious enough to, create a LinkedIn account and started getting connected. And then actually growing up, I didn't have the luxury of, growing up in America. So WIMNA was completely inaccessible. I had like I said before, like I had no history. My family has no history in racing at all, period. So I didn't know how to get connected. And honestly, I just got up on LinkedIn. I looked up literally all race engineers or anything affiliated to motorsport. And I started hitting everybody up, all these strangers I've never met. And I was like, hey, I want I want a foot in the door, and I want to further my education, and this is what I have got going for me. What advice would you give to me? If you were me, what would you do? And I just I got plugged in just like that. And the next thing I knew, when I got to the US, it made it so much more accessible. WIMNA was a game changer. Honestly, I hope to do something like that for India someday. We'll see. But yeah, no. And then after coming here, my boss and all of the guys, I gotta say, I love the attention. And it's always a good sense of humor in the shop. I mean, always up for a good laugh. But at the end of the day, it makes for an amazing relationship to have somebody you look up to and follow closely in the footsteps. And and again, this is a point from the mistakes that I'd like to add to, is that you either learn from your own mistakes or you learn from other people's mistakes. And that's something that's really taught me is, everybody's on a different journey. But, more often than not, if you can choose to avoid mistakes, why not listen to somebody's story? Get curious, get to know their story, what got them started, and chances are you'll get closer and closer to that, realizing your goal or your dream, whatever you set out to do.
That is
Yeah.
powerful. The whole thing was just phenomenal because honestly, Jennifer, when I started coaching,
Mhm.
I was 25 when or 24 when I became the top assistant at University of Tennessee, and it was scary.
Oh, yeah.
I got in my car with no air conditioning in the middle of the summer, and that's when Lynn, you'll understand this. There was no internet, so I went through tons of paper and magazines and newspapers to find out what teams were the top in the nation, and I drove to
Wow.
every one of the top 10 and sat down with those coaches, and so
Wow.
that I was more prepared
Right.
when I got to Tennessee to succeed.
There you
That's
go.
That's critical to go in and put in the work and advocate for your dream because
Right.
too often we feel there's a feeling, Jennifer, you're such a blessing because your generation sometimes and the generations behind you have a feeling of entitlement.
Mhm.
as opposed to let me work and earn and learn. So I'm
Mhm.
going to open it up to everyone to speak on it. Ah, love this.
I was going to say, of course, mentorship is important, support is important. Has been sad sometimes in my career that other women haven't, and it have been, it has been sad. It has been sad. You expect that perhaps they understand what you're going through, but it has been a little bit different. But I will tell you one thing: if you ever can come to one of the women quarterly dinners that we are doing, you get out of that dinner and you are just like you feel very uplift. You feel like you own the world. With that said, um, I wanted to be an astronaut. Yet I wanted to be an engineer because I wanted to be an astronaut. But everything that I knew about an astronaut was what I saw on TV and I saw in the newspaper. I never met an engineer until I got to the university. I never saw that example in real life. My love for math and science came from my dad, from what he was teaching me and professors and all that kind of stuff. But I realized that now people like Jennifer, right, and other young people have an opportunity to go to the internet, go to social media and learn so much, opportunity to travel, to see, to come and see what we do in our shops. Also, they get many people that can go to their schools and talk about careers and so on. And there was not something that I grew up with. But I realized at first I really met a mentor, one of those first mentors that I was like, wow, I was craving that. I never really had that. And that's something that we all have to do. And not only mentor for women in racing, but mentor perhaps for young boys that want to understand, hey, how can I get in racing, or how can I get in a professional sport? How can I get in any career? And it's our responsibility to help them to get there. So we are very blessed. I believe we have been extremely blessed to have the opportunity to be an agent of change. I
Mm.
believe everybody in this call um, is an agent of change in some way, and it's our responsibility to keep going and going and help others. So I always say, I wanted to be the first female astronaut, okay, and I wanted to emulate Sally Ride, the first female American astronaut. So I fell in love with cars. That didn't happen. This is my space. I love it. But before she passed away, I got the opportunity to meet her.
Oh,
So
wow.
my dream in some way became a reality. I met her, and the interesting thing is how I met her. I met her because she put together where she was bringing a lot of females together to talk about their careers and inspire young girls about their careers. And I got an opportunity to do that. Isn't that amazing? In some way, at the end, everything worked out. Okay, but again, it's just about right now. It's about how we can help others to get where we are. Doesn't only have to be females. Everybody. How do we help the next generation to understand you have to work hard to get your dreams?
Mhm.
Ladies, ah, this is amazing. Go ahead. Cindy or Lynn, anything on that area?
Well, I will add that, we did some research a while back. I think it was in 2004. Actually, Don, I don't know if you remember Don Sabo from the Women's Sports Foundation, but he worked with us and wanted to, measure the impact and the impression that women in motorsports were having. And this was back in, I think, 2004. And one of the surprises for me was that, I mean, I always thought it was about if you can see it, you can be it, and we could represent, that women were capable of doing this and could be very successful, and that this would impact other women and it would impact the industry to support women, get sponsors and all that. But one of the sort of surprises was how many men, it was 75% of the respondents were male, which made sense in a way because more men actually followed motorsports back in 2004 than now, um, was that the impact that young boys would see when they could see a woman do something that they didn't know a woman could do, they didn't think a woman could do, and that would impact their way of treating girls and women in their lives, whether it's their teachers or their schoolmates or their friends, that it had a much broader impact of their way of thinking about women, because almost every person probably over the age, well, now maybe 14 or 15, because of all the simulating and you can do, the sim racing and all of that, thinks that they can drive fast and that they could be the best race car driver out there. They got the need for speed, and because now they can do it, sitting at their computer. And in most cases, there was these guys think that because they only mostly see guys doing it, that's what you had to be, and the guys are going to be better. So when you see females out there actually competing and beating guys and actually doing it well, it really had an impact on the way men think. And I couldn't believe how much that shone through on the research that we did.
Wow. Cindy?
I just loved everything everybody said, so I'm going to pass on this one.
Yeah. So, ladies, what would be your advice to our audience about being successful, being part of a team? What would be your parting words of wisdom for our audience? So, Cindy, you can start there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what I really, really, really wish right now, Coach Bev, is we could see the people on the Zoom call. Part of the fun of doing these events is seeing their eyes, and it's seeing their reactions. I mean, to see smiles and all that. So I guess my departing is just, as I said earlier, work with passion. Lynn said kindness. It's a great word. And just take pride in what what you do, and the difference you can make in the world with your work.
Jennifer?
Yeah, no, I going off of what Cindy said. So passion, I would say, hard work, and I actually have a personal story. I would actually describe this and put it into perspective. You all know that I'm an engineer and stuff, but I wasn't always your stereotypical numbers girl, honestly. And I took a gap year after undergrad in automobile engineering to really think about this, because numbers didn't come naturally to me. And everybody was second guessing. They were like, wait a minute. But then by this point, I was already bitten by the motorsport bug, the racing bug. And I was like, no, it's always going to be plan A or nothing. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I got curious, and I was trying to look into more options. And, for some reason, India was geared to more Formula One, and we don't even get coverage. I don't think so, for IndyCar and NASCAR. So I was really not exposed to this, but I got to reading Adrian Newey's book. And for those of y'all who don't know who he is actually revered as one of the greatest Formula One designers of our time. And he engineered Senna's car. So Ayrton Senna was, if not the greatest driver of all time. So anyway, so I was reading his book, and early on he talked about math being his Achilles heel, he put it. And I don't know, but that was the greatest revelation for me. It was a light bulb moment, because I thought, man, this is the only thing that's keeping me between me and my goals. If I work 10 times as hard as anybody else with the determination to not give up, to have a good, strong support system, to support me every step of the way, even somebody who is not naturally as gifted as me is going to come through, is going to see results. And that's what I want to emphasize on is, when you experience failure, it's just how you choose to handle it and how that's a defining characteristic as a person. And it really, like I said before, it helps you build character, and it makes you a better and more efficient and well-rounded, as an engineer too, because let's be honest, there are going to be days you're not going to ace those numbers. There's going to be days when the car is just going to gas up. You mess up with fuel calculations, but how else are you going to learn or to arrive at the winning formula? So my advice would be, in a nutshell, to work hard, not give up, and then success will come, and also trust God, because I wanted to say that, but yeah, so success will come.
You go, girl.
Alba?
You have to find your purpose in life, and sometimes God put you in a place and you don't understand why you are, but later you understand, okay, I needed to go to this experience to get to where I needed to be. And that's something that is not easy to recognize, but it's part of the deal. Jennifer said something there about don't give up, and that's something that I pretty much, and I have it in front of me at the office. Do not give up. Do not give up. Do not give up, because there are days that there's people around you that try to make your life very miserable. Okay, so but you cannot give up. You have to have very focus on what you have to do. At the same time, research. Take an opportunity to research to get where we are. And with that said, what I want to say with that is the following: you cannot become the crew chief of the team, without going to, you have to start from the bottom. Many times you have to start from the bottom to get to that dream job. And you have to be willing to do. And one characteristic that we look in racing is the passion and the willingness to do whatever it takes. Sometimes
Oh,
sometimes if there's something, if we have an issue, I always do this with the team. We're all humans, right? And we tend to complain sometimes, but I just go with my watch and I give them 3 minutes. Okay, complain, say everything. Okay, 3 minute mark. Okay, let's find out the solution now. We're humans. They give them a time to be a human, right? But we need to work on the
I
solution.
love that.
We need to work on the solution. And I keep saying, one thing that I do, and I know that this may be controversial, but when I hire interns, I tend to ask them a question: Are you willing to clean the floor as part of your job? And I do it, and I put that question out there just to see how badly they want to do something, how badly they want to work hard and learn. And those that answer pretty much, yeah, I'm part of that. Those are the ones that are most successful at the end. Because they are willing, every job is extremely important, doesn't matter what. But you have to start from somewhere to make sure that you become the crew chief, the president of the companies, some of that. So the journey is the fun part, okay? To work hard for something is the fun part. So, enjoy it. Enjoy it. Every day it's too short. Enjoy what you're doing. So, thank you for the opportunity, Coach. Really, this is awesome.
Oh, this is awesome. Glenn?
Well, so much good richness has been said, and I don't want to just repeat. I mean, I think if you could find your passion, and sometimes it comes late. I mean, but you got to be curious. You have to really be curious. I love hearing Jennifer talk about, the research, but you have to be curious about stuff. Once you've kind of grab on, you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to motivate other people to believe in you. You've got to build your personal net worth and your personal circle. Failure is just the opportunity to begin again more intelligently, because stuff's going to happen that you just wish hadn't happened. And there is a piece of destiny in all this. It took me the longest time to figure that out. I mean, it's hard. I'm not going to go through the long stuff of, but there is a piece of destiny in this world. Everybody has a place. And if you are fortunate enough to work hard enough and reach that place, and then just remember to reach behind you and pull others with you. So that's all I can say. And I'm blessed to be still here. I'm blessed to be able to have such a great group of people that are aligned with our mission, which is to create a circle of community that will support opportunities for women in motorsports in North America and actually all over the world, and help grow our sport and to help make our sport better, and to continue to grow as a human being and engage, other sports, other disciplines, because we can learn so much from each other. So we hope to have you, Beverly, now that I know you're living in the Valley. You better come to our summit, November 7th and 8th, our Women with Drive Summit. which
I will
be,
be there.
yep, I think we have a little graphic that we could put up on that so that we could get people to come to our
Yes, can
website.
we start the graphics now?
Just that one that's talking about November 7th and 8th, because we're going to have a lot of rich stories, and we're going to have young people. I know we're going to have Jennifer there. I'm going to have Alba there, and Cindy and I. So it'll be about best practices and about what the opportunities are. And so it'll be a great event that we hope that people will come and join us.
Absolutely. And this is a prime example of not staying in your comfort zone, and I call our comfort zone our zone of familiarity, which is step outside and meet people who don't do what you do, who don't look like you are, who aren't in the same age group that you are, whether younger or older, because there's a lesson in the blessing of every encounter. So that's our Women in Sports. Um, it's just been a phenomenal opportunity to hear your voices and your wisdom and your intelligence and just the preciseness and the love of what you do. I hold on to this word passion very, very dearly. You fight for what you're passionate about. And right now, it's about be the diversity, the embracing of diversity that you wish to see within the world. It starts with you. Embrace diversity. But it starts with just simple conversations of hello. And look at Lynn and I years later. And when
Yeah,
we spoke, it was like we'd never not talking in years.
that's
That's
right.
because that's what love and that's what friendship is. But right now we want to end with we have the ABIS Advancements of Blacks in Sports Gala that's going to be coming up soon. But I also want to honor the greatness that exists within our community. There is a Step Up by Johnny and Felicia Allen that's coming up. Phenomenal. I get to be on that. We don't have a graphics for it, but We Coach is going to be prior to a Step Up. So Felicia Allen and Johnny Allen have the Step Up. I can't wait to come to North Carolina. Hopefully I'll get to see all of you or some of you there. And I also we started something new today on this last episode of our season. We'll start again in August, but we want to honor some of the successes that exist within our community. So here I'd like to honor Joetta Clark and Joetta Clark Diggs and her daughter Talithia Diggs, who is the SEC Academic Athlete of the Year. So it's not just that she is one of the top athletes in the country, she's academically one of the top student athletes in the country. Also, like to honor Joetta and Edwin Moses and some others who are all being inducted into the USA Track and Field Hall of Fame as well. So I don't know if we have those graphics, but if you do, put them up. Stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, support the ABIS, support Women in Motorsports North America. Be bold enough to attend the different events. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. Be bold enough. And there's Bawapa, who is a phenomenal sisterhood. She is honoring her son who passed away. So I hope you guys donate to her foundation for her son who was a track coach who passed away early. So I thank all of you for sharing your sport with us, sharing your love of your sport, but mainly sharing your heart and your wisdom with our audience. So thank you guys so much. And thank you, viewers, for listening in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.